everybody, Philippa here, and welcome to my talk on King Lear. It's such an honour for me to be able to talk to you about this play, which I've spent a lot of my life thinking about. The play begins with a mini scene between the two most important people in the court apart from Lear and his family, the Earl of Gloucester and the Earl of Kent, together with the bastard son of Gloucester, whose name is Edmund. The two earls talk about the upcoming division of the kingdom. They know it's going to happen, but they don't know how it's going to happen. So they arouse our curiosity in the audience. They also talk about Edmund, and Gloucester speaks with great disrespect about his son. He says that he was conceived out of wedlock and is a bastard. He has been out 9 years, and away he shall again. He seems to have no problem with Edmund going away again. Imagine what that is like, to be his son, to know that your father doesn't actually care that you've been away so long and are about to go away again. And I mention this because Edmund's character will emerge as very harsh in this play. But I want you to think back to this early scene and to see the deep disrespect with which his father has viewed him, and then to be able to imagine how it is that he has no love or respect for his father. And this play is all about love. We then enter the main body of the first scene, which is one of the longest Shakespeare scenes in all of his oeuvre. Lear enters with his 3 daughters. He tells them that he's about to divide the kingdom, but then he makes an astonishing demand. He tells the daughters that each of them has to let him know how much she loves him in order to deserve the best portion of the kingdom. Gonal responds and says she's the eldest. She says, "I love you more than word can wield the matter, dearer than eyesight, space, and liberty." And Lear is very pleased with this and gives her a portion. Regan, the second eldest, then says, "I am of that self-metal as my sister, and prize me at her worth, only she comes too short." Lear's delighted by this, and he gives her a portion. He then asks Cordelia, letting her know that she is his favourite, and asking her what she can say to get the best portion of the kingdom. And she replies, to his horror, "Nothing, my lord." He says, "Nothing will come of nothing, speak again." And she replies, "I cannot heave my heart into my mouth." And she also reminds us of something that Lear has flagged early in the scene, the fact that this is her betrothal day. The King of France and the Duke of Burgundy have been waiting in the kingdom for some time, vying for her hand. So Lear is infuriated. He calls her new adopted to our hate. He's so shamed and furious. He calls the Duke and the King in, and he says to them, "This woman, my daughter, has no dowry. Does either of you want her?" And we can assume that he imagines neither of them will, and that he also imagines that she will remain to the side of the court as the emblem of what it means to disobey him. Burgundy says, "Give but that portion that you promised," and here she goes, Duchess of Burgundy. Cordelia replies that if fortune is what he wants, then she has no interest in being his wife. The King of France then says that she is herself a dowry, that he doesn't require any dowry apart from her excellent person. He and Cordelia are about to leave, but before they do, Cordelia says to her 2 older sisters, "I know you what you are." She also says, "Love well our father." Now, that whole idea of love well our Father brings me to the point that in my life, many people, when they find that I work on King Lear, say to me, I am Cordelia. My life has been that of Cordelia. I was rejected by my parents for not explaining things in the way they wanted me to, and I was disinherited, or I was thrown away, I was outcast. Nobody I've ever met has said, I am Regan or I am Goneril. And yet, surely there are more children in the world who feel less loved in their families of origin rather than the most beloved. And I think what is going on there is that Cordelia creates a division between her and her sisters, where her nothing, my lord, is quickly seen to be an expression of the inability to measure love. And then she comes back in the play later to save her father. So you put those two together and you see somebody who's been thrown out because they would not accept the ridiculous, demanding terms that the father has insisted on. And the two older sisters who have given him exactly what he wants, the speeches of love, are seen as devilish because they have obeyed his orders. So all by way of saying that as the play goes on, we will see Lear divested of everything, and we will see the two older daughters treat him with great disrespect. But I would love to consider that they are more and more complex than the mere devilish characters they're often portrayed as. And this not only takes some focus away from Lear and gives it to the daughters who have very much fewer lines than Lear or Gloucester or even the Fool, but it also asks that we consider the harm that Lear has done in remaining at the center of his universe for 80 years and upward. And so we also can contemplate his journey with more depth and breadth. Now, after that cataclysmic first scene, things quickly go downhill. Lear is very demanding. He has 100 knights that he has insisted upon. They go to Goneril's castle, and Goneril says, it's impossible to do my job, co-running the kingdom, when I have your riotous knights around. Lear is saying, I don't want to wait a jot for dinner, so there's a confrontation between them. Regan comes in, and Lear says, well, I'm going to go to Regan if you won't take me and my 100 knights. And the two daughters barter back and forth in the most heartbreaking way, where we find that neither of them is willing to accommodate any more than Lear. So they go from 100 to 50 to 25, and then Regan says, we have everybody you need to serve you. What need one? And so Lear is stripped of not only the lands and properties and duties he's given away, but even those 100 knights. So he is down to nothing except for his fool and for the Earl of Kent, who he's also thrown out at the beginning of the play because Kent has said, see better Lear, and has called him foolish. Kent has come back disguised to help him. And in this fourth scene of the play, Lear asks, who is it that can tell me who I am? Now I'm going to suggest a couple of things. One is that Lear comes to experience what it is to be dethroned from the center of the universe. And in this sense, Lear is every one of us. Everybody is a king until we're told that we're not. whether it be at 2 days, 2 months, 2 years, 20 or 80 years and upward. And everyone also is a beggar in waiting. And Lear comes to see something of this human paradox as he journeys through the play. The other thing I want to suggest is that while it is possible to change, I feel that it's impossible for human beings to change alone. And Lear, while he has divested himself and has been stripped of everything, yet has a few loyal subjects. The fool, Kent disguised as Caius, Edgar, the oldest son of Gloucester, who is disguised as poor Tom. They huddle around him and remind him of who he was and is, Your Majesty. And for me, those words, Your Majesty, remind me that we all, as human beings, have majesty. It's just that so few people around us can see it or acknowledge it, because people are so often addicted to seeing the majesty to be recognized in themselves. And so I feel that we can all learn an incredible lesson from these simple words, Your Majesty, which should apply to everyone. And Lear sees this when he looks at the character he thinks is a beggar, this poor Tom, and he says, Is man no more than this? And he says, I have taken too little care of this. He says that human beings, that mankind is no more than such a poor, bare, forked animal as thou art. In all his years of being a king, he has never had to see this human truth. And he sees it now. And as I mentioned before, the motif of blindness, which applies to both himself and to Gloucester, will resound again and again in this play. Gloucester, for his foolishness, will lose his eyes physically. And he will say, I stumbled when I saw. I see more truly now that I don't have my physical eyes. And we see that Lear also comes to a vision that he's never needed to be capable of. So this play is, I love to think of it as a dethroning of the self from the center of the universe, where all of us can, in some sense, be Lear. But if all of us are Lear, we are also Cordelia. We are also Goneril and Regan. We are also Edmund and Edgar, Gloucester and the fool, the person who pays the price for so much that goes on around him, who sees what is happening and has no power to influence it, can only comment on it. So I think that this play remains such an amazing work, because we are, in a sense, all parts of this play in our human paradox. Bye for now, and see you next week. If you want to know more about the play in regard to Australia and my sense of abandonment and what that means in terms of Shakespeare's Lear and other plays, I'd love to mention my book, The King and I, published by Arden. I hope you don't mind me giving this little plug